Not every person moving to Baldwin County is looking for a beach town. Not every person is looking for a charming, walkable downtown like Fairhope. Some people want something a little more practical. They want a place that gives them suburban neighborhoods, everyday conveniences, access to shopping and restaurants, a reasonable drive to Mobile, and still keeps them connected to the Eastern Shore in Mobile Bay. That's where Daphne, Alabama comes in. Daphne is one of those areas that people often start considering once they realize they want to live in Baldwin County, but they also want something that works for their normal day-to-day life. It's not Gulf Shores, it's not Orange Beach, and it doesn't feel exactly like Fairhope either. Daphne has its own feel. It's more suburban, more commuter-friendly, and for a lot of people, more practical. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through what it's really like living in Daphne, Alabama. The lifestyle, the location, the housing, the convenience, what people like about it, and what you should think about before deciding if it's the right fit for you. And by the end of this video, you should have a much clearer idea of whether Daphne matches what you're looking for. But first, if this is your first time on the channel, I'm really glad that you're here. I'm Miranda Baldridge with Advantage Real Estate, your local go-to realtor and community connector right here in Baldwin County, Alabama. I help people relocate to Daphne, Fairhope, Foley, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Robertsdale, and all the surrounding areas. One of the biggest things I help buyers understand is that every area in Baldwin County has a different feel. Daphne feels different from Fairhope, Daphne feels different from Gulf Shores, and Daphne feels different from Foley. So if you're thinking about moving to Baldwin County or anywhere near the Alabama Gulf Coast, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I share videos about what it's really like living here and what you should know before making the move. And if you ever have questions about homes, neighborhoods, or relocating to the area, feel free to reach out anytime. All right, let's talk about what it's really like living in Daphne. One of the biggest reasons people consider Daphne is the location. Daphne sits on the eastern shore of Mobile Bay, and it's located just off of I-10, which makes it very different from some of the beach communities further south. The city of Daphne says it has about 11 miles east of Mobile and about 45 miles west of Pensacola. So it gives residents access to multiple directions without being directly in the Gulf Beach areas. That location is one of the biggest advantages. If you work in Mobile, you have appointments in Mobile, travel through Mobile, or you just want easier access to a larger city, Daphne can be much more convenient than living farther south in Gulf Shores or Orange Beach. At the same time, you are still in Baldwin County and you still have access to the Eastern Shore lifestyle. You're close to Fairhope, Spanish Fort, Mobile Bay, shopping, restaurants, and major roads. So Daphne often makes sense for people who want to be connected to the region without being too far south. It is not really a beach lifestyle city in the same way Gulf Shores or Orange Beach are. It is more of a suburban home base that gives you access to a lot of different parts of the area. And for many people, that practical location is exactly what they're looking for. Daily life in Daphne usually feels more suburban than coastal vacation style. You are not waking up every day in a tourist beach town. You are not living in a place where everything revolves around vacation rentals, condos, and beach traffic. Instead, Daphne feels more like a place where people live their normal everyday lives. You have neighborhoods, schools, shopping centers, restaurants, medical offices, grocery stores, and regular daily routine. For a lot of buyers, that's the appeal. They want a place that feels comfortable and practical. They want to be able to run errands, get to appointments, go out to eat, commute if they need to, and still enjoy being near Mobile Bay and the Eastern Shore. Daphne gives you that balance. It has more of a suburban rhythm. There are busier areas, especially near main roads and shopping corridors, but overall, the lifestyle is not as tourism driven as Gulf Shores or Orange Beach. So if you are moving from a larger metro area and you want something that feels easier to manage, Daphne may feel familiar in a good way. It has convenience without feeling like a huge city. It has access without feeling like you're completely removed from everything. And that's one of the reasons people compare Daphne with places like Fairhope and Spanish Fort. A lot of people who look at Daphne also look at Fairhope, and that makes sense because they're both on the Eastern Shore and they're close to each other, but they do not feel exactly the same either. Fairhope is more known for its downtown charm, shops, restaurants, Mobile Bay views, and that polished small town lifestyle. Daphne is usually more practical and suburban. That does not mean Daphne does not have nice areas or local character. It absolutely does. But the overall feel is different. Fairhope is more where people go when they they want the downtown experience, the boutique shops, the bayfront charm, and the lifestyle that feels more centered around the town itself. Daphne is often where people look when they want convenience, access, neighborhoods, commuting options, and a location that works well for everyday life. For some buyers, Fairhope feels more charming. For others, Daphne feels more convenient. Neither one is better for everyone. It depends on your priorities. If you want that downtown lifestyle and you are comfortable with the price points that often come with Fairhope may be a strong fit. But if you want something more suburban, more connected to I-10, and potentially more practical for commuting or everyday errands, Daphne may make more sense. That is why it's important to visit both and not assume that they feel the same just because they're nearby each other. Housing in Daphne is another reason people consider it. Daphne has a mix of neighborhoods from established residential areas to newer communities, townhomes, and homes closer to Mobile Bay in some parts. You will see different price points and different styles depending on where you're looking. Some buyers like Daphne because it can offer more of a traditional suburban housing feel. You may find neighborhoods with single-family homes, yards, garages, and a more familiar layout compared to what you might see in some of the coastal areas. In Gulf Shores or Orange Beach, a lot of buyers are thinking about condos, vacation-style homes, waterfront property, or beach access. In Daphne, the conversation is often more about everyday living. How close are you to I-10? How close are you to shopping? How far are you from work? What does the neighborhood feel like? How does the home function for your daily routine? That is what makes Daphne feel practical for many buyers. It is not usually about buying a vacation-style property. It is more about choosing a place to live full-time. And for people who want that suburban home base in Baldwin County, Daphne can be a strong option to explore. Another thing people like about Daphne is that you still have access to Mobile Bay. This is not the same as living on the Gulf beaches. You are not in Gulf Shores or Orange Beach, and you should not expect that same beach town lifestyle. But Daphne does give you that Eastern Shore connection to the bay. There are areas where you can enjoy bay views, waterfront scenery, trails, parks, and outdoor spaces. Daphne is also known as the Jubilee City, which connects to the Mobile Bay Jubilee phenomenon that the area is known for. So while Daphne is not a beach destination in the same way Gulf Shores is, it still has a coastal identity. It feels connected to the water, but in a more subtle, everyday way. For some people, that's actually a positive. They do not necessarily want beach traffic or tourist crowds, but they do like the idea of being near the bay and having access to outdoor scenery. That is one of the biggest differences between Daphne and the southern beach communities. Daphne is not trying to be a vacation destination. It's more of a residential Eastern Shore community with access to Mobile Bay. Another major advantage of Daphne is convenience. If you live in Daphne, you're close to a lot of everyday services. You have grocery stores, restaurants, medical offices, retail, and access to nearby areas like Spanish Fort and Fairhope. You also have access to I-10, which is a big deal for people who need to travel toward Mobile, Pensacola, or other parts of the region. I-10 connects Mobile and Baldwin County communities like Daphne and Fairhope, which is one reason this location works well for commuters and people who need regional access. For some, relocating from another area, this can be a big advantage. You may not want to feel isolated. You may want to know that daily errands are easy. You may want access to bigger services without having to drive a long distance. Daphne usually checks a lot of those boxes. This is especially important for people who are comparing Daphne with other areas further south. Gulf Shores and Orange Beach are great if you want beach lifestyle. Foley is great if you want access to the beach and residential convenience farther south. But Daphne is usually better positioned if you care about the Eastern Shore, Mobile access, and I-10. That is why the location matters so much. Now, like a lot of Baldwin County, Daphne has grown over time, and growth can be both a positive and a challenge. On the positive side, growth can bring more restaurants, more services, more shopping, and more attention to the area. It can make an area feel active and convenient, but growth can also mean more traffic, more development, and more pressure on roads. Daphne's location near I-10 is a major advantage, but it can also mean certain areas get busy, especially during commuting times or around major corridors. And this is something buyers should understand before moving. Daphne is not a quiet rural town where you never deal with traffic. It's a growing suburban area on the Eastern Shore with regional access. So depending on where you live and where you need to go, traffic patterns patterns can matter. There are also ongoing infrastructure discussions and projects in the region. For example, AlDOT announced in April of 2026 a proposed I-10 project that would add an additional lane in each direction at the US 98 interchange down to the Alabama 181 interchange, which shows how important this corridor is for the area. So if you are considering Daphne, it is smart to think about your commute, your daily routes, and where you want to be located within the city. The right side of Daphne for one person may not be the right side for someone else. It really depends on your routine. One thing I always want people to understand is that Daphne is not the same as living near the Gulf beaches. If your dream is to wake up and be minutes from the sand, Daphne probably is not the right fit. You can still drive to Gulf Shores or Orange Beach, but that is different from living there. Daphne is more about Eastern Shore living, Mobile Bay, suburban convenience, and access to Mobile. So if you want beach restaurants, condo towers, vacation energy, and the Gulf beaches as part of your daily routine, you may want to look further south. But if you like the idea of living in Baldwin County, having easier access to Mobile, being close to the Eastern Shore, and still being within driving distance to the coast, Daphne may make a lot of sense. That's the trade-off. Daphne gives you practicality and access. Gulf Shores and Orange Beach give you the beach lifestyle more directly. Fairhope gives you more downtown charm and bayfront character. Foley gives you southern Baldwin County convenience closer to the beaches. So Daphne has its own lane, and for the right person, that lane works really well. Daphne may be a good fit if you want a suburban lifestyle in Baldwin County. It may be a good fit if you want access to Mobile, I-10, Spanish Fort, Fairhope, and the Eastern Shore. It may be a good fit if you want everyday convenience, neighborhoods, shopping, restaurants, and a location that works for normal full-time living. It may also be a good fit if you like being near Mobile Bay, but you do not necessarily need to live directly in a Gulf Beach town. But Daphne may not be the best fit if your top priority is beach access, waterfront condo living, boating lifestyle, or a vacation-style coastal environment. For that, you may want to compare places like Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, or even Fairhope, depending on what type of water lifestyle you want. The most important thing is to be honest about what you actually want your everyday life to feel like, because that is what determines whether Daphne is the right fit. Overall, living in Daphne, Alabama is about convenience, location, suburban living, and access to the Eastern Shore. It is not the same as living in Fairhope. It is not the same as living in Gulf Shores or Orange Beach. And it is not the same as living in Foley. Daphne has its own feel. For some people, it is exactly what they're looking for because it gives them a practical home base in Baldwin County with access to Mobile, I-10, shopping, restaurants, and Mobile Bay. For others, it may feel too suburban or too far from the Gulf beaches. So like anywhere, the right answer depends on your lifestyle, your budget, and your priorities. And if you're thinking about moving to Daphne, Fairhope, Foley, Gulf Shores, Orange Beach, Robertsdale, or anywhere in Baldwin County, feel free to reach out. I help people relocate to this area all the time, and I'd be happy to help you compare the different communities and figure out which one fits your lifestyle, budget, and your long-term goals. You can call, text, or email me anytime. All of my contact information is in the description below. And if you found this video helpful, which I hope you did, make sure you subscribe to the channel because I share a lot of videos about what it's really like living here along the Alabama Gulf Coast. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.